You guys ready to talk about this co-main event?
Let's do it.
All right, boys. And what might have stirred up the most clicks and controversy off of the heels of UFC 282 in the co-main event, Paddy Pimblett. In a lightweight bout, Paddy Pimblett defeated Jared Gordon on the scorecards by unanimous decision. All three judges scoring the fight 29-28 in favor of Pimblett. Just to get a little specific here, because this is what this calls for, Doug Crosby scored at 29-28, giving Pimblett rounds 1 and 2. Chris Lee scored at 29-28, giving Pimblett rounds 2 and 3. And Ron McCarthy also gave Pimblett rounds 1 and 2. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. I have a feeling that you have a little bit of a take. Actually, no, I know both you guys have takes that might give us some comments on this video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I know this is all anyone wants to talk about, and that fucking 90% of the world thinks Jared Gordon got robbed, and that the UFC is fixed, and that Paddy Pimblett got a gift and all this. I don't. I think this was literally a coin toss fight that could 100% fairly be scored for either fighter. And remember, I'm the guy that bet that Paddy would never be a ranked fighter. So there's no favoritism here at all. If anything, I think this fight exposed all the reasons why I've been trying to say I didn't think Paddy would be a ranked fighter. I think there's too many holes in his game. I think he's too easy to hit. As good of a grappler as he is, I don't think he's a good enough wrestler necessarily to control where he is. I think he's a little too sloppy. I could go on. But I think a lot of that had a light shined on it in this fight. But with all that being said, I think that it's fair to say that he got by. I've scored this fight. Sorry, I've watched this fight 3 times. Live, 2 rewatches. I scored it the same exact way every single time, which is that I scored round 1 for Jared Gordon, which I think everyone agrees on. Other than those 2 judges. I don't know who's giving Paddy Pimblett round 1. He absolutely did not win round 1. I scored round 1 for Jared Gordon, landing the cleaner and bigger shots. Round 2, I scored for Paddy Pimblett. I know there are people who want to score this round for Gordon. I really don't see it. Every judge had it for Pimblett. I thought Paddy landed more. I thought he had the more significant moments, other than maybe one strike that Gordon landed that was solid. The stats back it up that Paddy did more in round 2. I think it's a Paddy round. I've watched it 3 times. I've scored for Paddy every single time. Then, round 3, I scored for fuck both of these guys. If you don't want to win the fight, then good luck dealing with a weird decision, and that's exactly what they fucking got. So, with that being said, the man who tried to stall, the man who tried to hold and do nothing all around, was Jared Gordon. And as I was watching live, thinking, man, Jared Gordon's got a real chance to beat Paddy Pimblett here. This would be crazy, because I had it 1-1 at that point. I couldn't believe that was what he fucking opted for. And honestly, I'm glad he didn't get the nod, because I'm not here for that fence stalling bullshit. He literally did 0 things in that round. None. 0 things. All he did was hug him against the fence, and you do not get points for hugging someone against the fence. I've made this point over and over again on this show. There are no points awarded for it. At least Paddy landed a few strikes, had a moment or 2. Didn't he? Isn't this even the round where he had the sub attempt toward the end? I think it was. So I give that round to Paddy, gun to my head. I really give it to no one because they both didn't fucking fight. And like I said, fuck them. But if I have to score that round for someone, I'll give it to the guy who did 4 or 5 little things over the guy who did 0 things. So I score that round for Paddy. 29-28 is totally fine with me. So I don't really get how we can be so sure that Jared Gordon won this fight by doing 0 things in round 3. So that's that. But with that being said, I will also say that Paddy's post-fight reaction was fucking ridiculous to act like he had just easily won a fight where he showcased how good he was or something, and he's talking about fight of the night. That was an absolute joke. And if he's going to go forward with that kind of approach of ignoring reality and ignoring shortcomings he may have, he's going to start to lose fans as quickly as he gained them.
Not to mention fights.
All right, Omar, your turn.
All right. So I'm the one who's usually been about seeing the potential in Paddy. I still see the potential in Paddy. but his flaws are grossly obvious after that fight. And the fact is that I needed more data as somebody who likes to watch a lot of technique and kind of evaluate technique, and I love learning technique. But watching him actually get put in positions where he needed to do certain things properly, he did it. As somebody who holds pads a lot for people now when I train, all I wanted to do watching those first 2 rounds especially was slap the holy shit out of Paddy Pimblett every time I saw his fucking hands come down. Like, you don't even know the frustration in my head. Every time that man's hands come down and he's like an inch away from Jared Gordon, I just wanted to pop him one right in the side of his face. And that's what his coaches need to do. I don't know if now the star power that Paddy Pimblett is carrying with him is starting to get the yes men under his belt, which is not going to do him any favors. His striking is mids, okay? It's run of the mill mids. MIDS. It is mids. All right? His hands are down. The man telegraphs his hooks. He throws them all the way from the back. The reality is the guys need to take more advantage of it. I don't really think you can. I really ultimately believe that people didn't think Paddy won this fight because they don't. They've had an issue with him in this last week with the whole aerial thing. Paddy Pimblett has been kind of making himself look like a dumbass recently. And then there's also the thing where he doesn't strike well. You know, visibly it's just not appealing, and you can see the flaws that go along with it. But you don't lose points because you don't look like you're striking well. You can't like a guy doesn't lose because you don't think he looks like he's striking well. The strikes were effective. It's not like Jared Gordon was like beating him to the punch every time he threw a hook. That's not what was happening. Jared Gordon was setting up his own strikes and they were exchanging back and forth. But those ugly ass hooks that nobody likes and we're making fun of were landing. So you can make fun of them all you want, but they were effective. And until somebody is able to counter specifically those hooks as they're being thrown to really open up Paddy and expose that side of things, you can't really talk too much shit. Ilia Topuria, side note, would murder that man with that specific strategy. FYI. Now, Paddy does a couple things well, in my opinion. I love his long-range striking. Those kicks are absolutely extended and are beautiful when you're talking about distance management. His 1-2s down the middle, I think, are also fantastic. There are very few fighters that are able to actually land at the end of their punches. The hooks could be a lot better from all sides. But there are a lot of good things that the man does. He does have a little bit of that, what's the boy's name with his chin in the air? I always forget now.
James Vick.
He's got a James Vick chin.
He does. You're right. I thought the same thing.
And I don't like it. I don't like it. You could see after the first 2 minutes of that fight, like Paddy Pimblett's whole mouth was red from getting cracked with the same left hook over and over again because he doesn't duck his chin in and he leaves it up in the air every time he throws. These are real small things, as far as I'm concerned, 101 things that he needs to tighten the fuck up, because there's no way he's going to fight somebody up in the rankings that's not going to destroy him at some point for these flaws. At this point, I am revising my statement. Currently, after what I just saw, he will not make top 10. Maybe he'll scratch the top 15. It's possible he gets by in another fight just like this, but top 10 with the killers in that 155 division, absolutely not. It won't happen. Something would need to change drastically.
I mean, just to react to your point about him tightening stuff up, there are two types of professional MMA fighters. There are game planners, and then there are guys who go in and fight the way that they fight and say that you have to react to me. I'm bringing the heat. And that's Paddy. Yep. I mean, Paddy's not new. He's not like he's kind of new to the UFC, yes, but like he's not like a 23-year-old with like a 7-0 record. He's like 23-4 or something. Like he's been around. He's been a pro for a while.
Yep.
And like fight to fight, like he goes in and he, for the most part, like when he shines, he kind of does the same thing. And to your point earlier, like until somebody stops him, until somebody punishes him for kind of leaving his hands down a lot, he kind of reminds me, since we're making comparisons, yes, a little bit of James Vick with the chin in the air. There's a little bit, now go with me here, Mark, go with me. a little bit of Charles Oliveira in that we have a guy whose skill set is that his greatest skill is, you would agree, that is his grappling. So he strikes with a kind of reckless abandon, being very confident no one wants to take him down, no one wants to roll with him. And if things get hairy, that's what he's looking for anyway. He's looking to get the fight to the ground at some point.
His grappling is a tenth of Charles Oliveira's grappling.
Literally.
I would agree. But that's Paddy's game plan, is it not?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all. That's all.
On that note, I heard him say after the fight, which I didn't know this, apparently pre-fight, he was telling people that he was not going to grapple. He wanted to showcase his striking because he's been winning via grappling a lot lately. So I never heard that. Only heard him say it after the fight, and he was like, yeah, I stuck to it. Like, I didn't grapple except for, like, moments where I had to like, get away or whatever. And I'm like, is that really what we're fucking doing? Like, we just had this conversation with Kevin Holland last week. Like, dude, are you trying to lose? You almost fucking lost that fight. Like, make sure you win the damn fights. I don't know what this trend is of like, oh, I'm so cool that I'm only going to use one part of my game. Like, you're not cool. You're dumb.
It's mixed martial arts.
It's like the people in MasterChef, completely off topic, but like the people when you watch those cooking competitions or something, and they're like really good at like making steak and chicken and like some savory shit, and then they're like, make us one of your best dishes. I'm going to decide to bake something. You ever baked this before? No, but I'm going to take a chance.
No, I do.
All right.
I mean, how much better off would he be right now if he fucking rear naked choked Jared Gordon in round 2? Instead of this.
Wouldn't be having all this shitstorm of controversy.
To Omar's point, I do think a lot of this comes from the fact that he is Paddy Pimblett. That people are watching, thinking, oh, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he such a big deal? Or they're watching because they're fans of Pimblett, and then they're disappointed that it's such a close fight and that he's not doing something spectacular. If that same fight happened, and because he's a UFC cash cow and people love to say, oh, look how rigged it is. People love to jump on that topic. But if that fight was, let's say, Jared Gordon versus Jim Miller, and it looked exactly the same, I'm fully confident that fight ends and people are like, man, that was a really close fight. I don't know who wins.
Okay, just real quick. My position on this fight is that I am with the people, gentlemen. And to be fair, for those who might not know, who might be joining us for the first time, on our text thread that the three of us have had for like a decade or the better part of a decade, and during fights we text each other live with our like reactions. So throughout that fight, I think I texted and I said towards the end of the second round, I texted, "Wow, I think Jared Gordon is running away with this," which Mark disagreed with. And then towards the end of the fight, towards the end of round 3, and then like after the bell, I said, I think yeah, Jared Gordon just like had the biggest win of his career. And then when it was unanimous, when Bruce Buffer started reading all 3 judges, I was like, oh, it's got to be Gordon. It's got to be Gordon. Utter shock. Look,
have you rewatched it yet?
I have. Yes, I have.
And did you still give round 2 to Gordon?
I did.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. My quick assessment. Okay, in terms of the controversy of it, there's a few different elements. Number one, the round that to so many people was so like not even in doubt was round 1, and the fact that 2 of the judges gave that to Pimblett is part of what it has like inflamed this whole thing.
Agree.
Then there's a whole Doug Crosby thing, and the fact that he scored the Sabatello fight with Bellator the night before, 50-45, which we don't have to get into here.
Wild.
Also wild. I think Paddy's reaction, like the immediate first words that were spoken was Pimblett being like so arrogant, like he won all 3. Like people were like completely was so inflammatory to the reaction as well. Pimblett got on the mic and was like, "Holy shit! I think I just kind of I eked that out. That was very close. Jared Gordon was most better than I expected. Also would have mitigated the shitstorm. I think there still would have been a shitstorm. How much
better would he look right now if he was like, yeah, I had a bit of an off night. He definitely was able to put me in some tough spots. I got things I got to work on, but I'm glad I managed to pull it out. Like he would look so much better right now.
Yeah.
Instead he's like, I won 1 and 2 easily.
Okay.
It's like,
I I think that 2 judges giving the first round to Pimblett is going a long way towards people thinking like A, robbery, and B, even some people thinking that it's fixed.
That's
I'm
fair.
not even going to get into. I don't know. Who the fuck knows?
He should never got the first round. Honestly, I think the first round goes back to a point we made before on this show, which is that because I feel like the way they were exchanging fit this bill is that the judges are watching live and we have screens and we are able to tell what is landing clean because in round one they were exchanging and Gordon's were always landing cleaner.
Yeah.
And I think live you probably couldn't tell.
The reality is there was more volume, I thought, from Paddy. Paddy was doing a bit more work while Jared Gordon was able to get inside and land cleaner shots, but with more efficiency because he wasn't throwing a lot of extra bullshit like Paddy Pimblett was. So it might look like Paddy Pimblett was doing more, whereas it might have looked like Jared Gordon, while landing, may have been technically landing less. But I agree with Mark. I mean, I thought I had Paddy Pimblett winning the second round, Gordon winning the first round, and the third round, I also had Paddy winning. But at that point, I was like, this is completely different than the first 2 rounds. I'm not really sure what the fuck is going on.
I would agree that the second round is probably the closest. The numbers are that the striking was by the numbers practically even with Pimblett landing literally like a few more strikes. But watching round 2, I thought it was more of the same. I felt like I saw Gordon having Pimblett on the back foot and Gordon's left hand always landing cleaner. Another huge contrast in the night, whereas Pimblett, which we've talked about, has a wide open defense in terms of striking. His hands are down, his chin is in the air. I loved seeing Gordon's high and tight defense the whole night. He stayed so disciplined, and I felt like a lot of Paddy's winging hard shots were either blocked or partially blocked. One of the biggest shots that the commentary team reacted for Pimblett, it might have been an uppercut or something. On the rewatch, I was like, oh, that hit Gordon's glove. Like his hands were here, and the shot came up and hit his glove. But the commentary team was like, oh my god. And then the fight obviously was going on. So I gave the second round to Gordon, and then the third round. Now help me understand. I mean, apparently position is not a thing anymore, or never was, because I thought that in the Greco-Roman clinch, the guy who has his back pressed against the cage is in the more dangerous position, more the disadvantageous position. So if a guy is in the control position in the clinch for, what was Gordon, for like 4 minutes of the round, and the striking is literally like 6 shots for Paddy, 4 shots for Gordon, I don't know. I'd give it to the guy who controls almost the whole round. So,
I mean, I'm not going to argue round 3. It's like I said, I'm totally fine with round 3 going to either fighter. But like letter of the law, if I was to literally put my shoulder on you and lean on the fence,
yeah,
and I don't move for 4 minutes, and you like elbow me twice, you should win the round, according to the actual scoring criteria.
I'm in my head too, and I agree with Mark. In my head, just think about it like if it was a fight. If you were fighting some random ass dude on the street and he's holding you up against the wall and you're beating on his head.
Well, there was no beating on any heads.
No, nobody was beating on anybody's head.
A fucking elbow to the back of your head. Listen, have one of your kids elbow you to the back of the head. That shit hurts. And as a grown man, it's just going to hurt even more. But just the strikes themselves, I think, do make a difference. And damage is the number one criteria when it comes to scoring MMA. It is the first and the criteria, I think, that scored the heaviest out of all of them.
I guess it should be. Yeah.
But again, that third round was balls. It sucked.
Yeah. Well, we ain't going to fix it.
No. Paddy Pimblett needs to do something, though, man, because that star power is going to go down. He's going to end up in, like, Bellator or some shit trying to rally over there if he continues to fight the way he's fighting now. Somebody's going to light him up.
I hope Dana's not dumb about this, and I guess I'm transitioning into the matchmaking portion of this now. But, initially, if Paddy had won this fight, say he finishes him, in my head I was like, we're probably going top 20. Like, he's going to probably fight some guy who's, like, on the edge of these rankings. I don't know who that would be. Like, I don't know, like is Joel Alvarez ranked, like, someone like that who's like right there, or a Bobby Green or someone like this, right? I do not want them to do that off of this win, because I don't think Paddy is like mentally in the right place or has his game in the right place to fight one of these killers yet, because I think he's going to lose. and I think it's going to go badly. So if I'm Dana, I'm hitting the pause button and we're staying right at this level, and I'm making Paddy show me he can look better than that against someone else at this level before I go past this level. So I got 3 names written down just that I thought would make sense.
Hit us.
Michael Johnson, who's a little more lower level in terms of where he's at these days, but I still think just because of his skill set and the veteran, IQ that he has, I think is a great test for Paddy. Matt Frivola, who's coming off a big KO.
Sure.
And Terrence McKinney, who's kind of been hovering around the Paddy Pimblett orbit for a while now in terms of a discussion. I think any of those 3 guys. And so also, I wanted to make the point of I want it to be someone who presents more danger than Jared Gordon does. Because as much as Gordon was landing clean, it's like he wasn't going to finish Paddy because Jared Gordon's not really that guy. I want to see Paddy in there with a similarly skilled guy like a Michael Johnson, Matt Frivola, Terrence McKinney, but all 3 of them could put Paddy the fuck out. And if he can't pass that test, we need to pump the brakes quite significantly. If he can pass it, then it's like, all right, you know what? Maybe he had a rough night with Jared Gordon. Let's keep going here.
Yeah, man. I think if he faces Terrence McKinney with the attributes that McKinney brings to lightweight and the striking, I think we see Paddy the grappler come right back.
Which would still be, let's be real, against Terrence
suit?
McKinney. Against Terrence McKinney, though, that doesn't really mean a whole hell of a lot. Terrence McKinney's very, very well rounded.
Yeah, he is. That's a tough matchup.
True.
Yeah. So a couple of names I also had. I kind of had one below and one above, because I also agree. I don't really think we need. I don't know what you had Jared Gordon at. I would assume somewhere in the mid-20s.
He was 29.
Okay, so bottom 20. So I would kind of still keep him just around that level as well. The one above I had was actually Clay Guida. Clay Guida coming off of a recent win to Scott Holtzman. Big name, but stylistically too, I think we would also end up seeing again how he can do against a guy who can grapple and who can also strike. And then the one below, I had Mark DeCasey, another one who's just came off of a loss to Michael Johnson. But DeCasey has kind of been a weird guy in and of itself, kind of figuring out whether he's a striker, a grappler, trying to figure out if he can put them both together. And I think that we could say something very similar for Paddy Pimblett as well. So I think it'd be interesting to see either one of those fights. But I think we need a lot more from Paddy Pimblett before we start shooting him up these rankings.
I think my favorite matchups of the ones mentioned would be either Frivola or McKinney, but I feel like from a promoter standpoint, maybe the smartest one would be Guida, because Guida is such a popular fan favorite, had such a big following as a result of being around forever. And I think he would be the most favorable matchup for a guy like Paddy, I think.
I agree. You could absolutely sell that. I just want it to be someone who can KO him.
Yeah.
So he has to show that this chin in the air is not an issue.
If Mark DeCasey can't take advantage of the holes in that game, Mark DeCasey shouldn't be in the UFC, because that man came in as a really good striker.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fully viable person to put something on Paddy Pimblett.
Any names you guys want to put out there for Jared Flash Gordon in terms of where he goes next at lightweight?
That's actually a question that I failed to think about.
I actually wondered, because, I like Gordon's game a ton. I wonder if he would go back to featherweight. I think he might, have more favorable matchups.
He's a tiny little man in there. The size difference I thought was kind of crazy. It didn't really. He seemed to deal with it really well, but again, it was something he had to quote unquote deal with. Where I don't think at 145 he would have to deal. If he is staying around at 155, this might be a little fucked up, I guess. But I really want to see him against Claudio Puelles.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Wow.
Hey, let's go.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
a great fucking fight.
Why do
Absolutely
you think
fun
that's? Why'd
fight.
you say it's fucked up? Why is that fucked up?
Because I could see Claudio Puelles destroying Jared Gordon's leg and whatnot. So
Sure.